It hit me like a punch to the gut out of nowhere. We just had dinner and I was about to pop the question, the real one, the one everyone dreams of. My chest was tight, hands shaky, but I was ready to say it. I'd never felt so sure about anything in my life. Then I grabbed my phone to double-check the message I'd sent earlier, and that's when I saw it. A string of texts between her and Mark, the best man. I'd always trusted Mark more than anyone. We'd been friends since college, and he'd been by my side through everything. I never suspected he'd be part of this. But there it was, clear as day, late-night messages, laughing emojis, and a few too many Miss US. Not innocent, not friendly, they were something else. My stomach dropped. My legs felt like they'd turned to rubber. I scrolled faster, heart pounding. The words, the tone, they weren't just friends anymore. They talked about meeting up in secret, about how nothing would stop them. I froze, eyes glued to the screen, feeling like I'd been punched again and again. How could I have missed this? How could I have trusted her? All this time, I looked around the apartment, everything suddenly weightless. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of the curtains, a world that didn't seem to matter anymore. My hands trembled as I clenched my fists. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a blow to everything I thought I knew about loyalty and love. I knew I had to act fast, but I didn't want to do something stupid. I needed to see her face, hear her lie. I grabbed my phone and hesitated. Should I text her? Call her? But what could I say that wouldn't sound desperate? No. I needed more evidence, something concrete, something I could hold in my hand. That's when I remembered that night she'd been acting funny, short, distracted, avoiding eye contact. I noticed her phone was a little more guarded lately and her behavior was off. She'd startle at small things like a text message pinging on her screen. I'd brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just tired or stressed. But now I saw it all for what it was. Signs. Red flags waving in neon. I decided to check her phone myself. I knew it was risky. Trust was already shattered, but I needed proof. I slipped it from her purse when she was in the bathroom, the room silent except for the distant hum of the washing machine. Her phone was unlocked. My stomach clenched as I unlocked it myself. The messages were right there, waiting. I scrolled through her texts, my eyes burning. They talked about meeting at the usual spot, about how she couldn't wait to see him, and more. I felt my jaw tighten. No, this wasn't just some flirtation, it was an affair. I could see their plans to meet again, and I could feel my world collapsing. The worst part, the way she'd lied so convincingly, the way she'd looked me in the eye every day, pretending everything was fine. She'd always been good at hiding her secrets, but not anymore. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just walk away from this. Not after everything we'd built, after I'd trusted her with my heart. I sat there, clutching her phone, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her. It was about reclaiming what was taken from me. About making her see that I wasn't naive. Not anymore. I had a plan. A plan that would shake her to her core without crossing the line into violence or chaos. But I couldn't do that yet. First, I needed to set everything in motion. I had to gather more evidence, plan my move carefully, and make sure she'd see exactly what she'd lost. The betrayal cut deep, but I was done being the victim. She'd regret ever crossing me. As I looked at her messages again, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I'd been blind, but now I saw, and I'd make sure she paid for it. She'd come home to her lies, and I'd be waiting for her with a plan she wouldn't see coming. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of anger and clarity. I knew I'd win this. She'd regret ever cheating, and I'd make sure she understood what loyalty really meant. This was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with the same sick feeling in my stomach. The kind of gut-wrenching ache that sticks with you, making your head feel foggy. I kept thinking about her, about Mark, about how everything went from normal to shattered in less than a second. I felt my fists clench every time the memory replayed. That betrayal was a punch I still hadn't fully recovered from. I knew I had to act carefully. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about making her understand that the trust was gone for good. But I also wanted to hit her where it would hurt most, emotionally, not physically. I decided I'd gather more evidence, find the right moment, and turn her world upside down. Not just for revenge, but to make her see she'd lost everything. I spent the rest of the morning planning. I needed to find out where Mark was working, what his schedule was like. I remembered a few times he'd been vague about his whereabouts lately, and now it made sense. I grabbed my laptop, started digging through social media, and tracked down his LinkedIn. Nothing incriminating there, but I knew with a little more digging I'd find something. Meanwhile, I kept her under close watch. She was acting strangely, more nervous, more guarded. She glanced at her phone a little too often, and I caught her trying to hide it when I entered the room. My stomach twisted. I wasn't going to let her brush this off. Later that afternoon, I decided to confront her directly. I sat her down in the living room trying to sound calm, but my voice trembled underneath. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my tone level. She looked surprised, maybe even a little guilty, but she quickly masked it. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice too casual. "You've been acting pretty strange lately." "And I found your messages," I said, pulling her phone out of my pocket and placing it in front of her. Her eyes widened and she froze. "Who is this?" I demanded, pointing to a message thread she'd missed deleting. "This isn't just friendly chatter. You're planning something with Mark. Tell me the truth." Her face went pale. She looked like she wanted to deny it, but the truth was right there. She hesitated, then muttered, "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think." I saw the texts. "I saw what you've been doing behind my back. How long has this been going on?" She swallowed hard, trying to find words. "It's just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far." That word, mistake, made my blood boil. I had no patience left for her excuses, no more apologies. I felt a strange, rising anger, but I kept my voice steady. "A mistake that involves my best man, that's a hell of a mistake." She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Too late," I snapped. "You think you can just hide this and everything will be normal again? No, I'm done. I'm done trusting you. I'm done pretending I don't see what's right in front of me." She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I growled, "because I've got a plan and it's already in motion." Her eyes flickered with fear. "What are you going to do?" "You're going to regret crossing me," I said coldly. "And tonight I'll show you exactly how much. You think you can cheat and get away with it? Not anymore." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I didn't care. That moment was the turning point. I wasn't waiting anymore. I had everything I needed: her betrayal, her secrets. Now I'd make her face the consequences. That night I stayed up late, setting my plan into motion. I'd hired a private investigator. I knew the spots Mark liked to meet her, and I had photos ready. I wasn't going to just confront her blindly. I wanted her to see that I knew everything. The evidence would be irrefutable. As I sat in the dark, I felt a strange mix of adrenaline and satisfaction. She'd betrayed me in the worst way, and now I'd turn her own lies against her. I'd make her see that loyalty isn't something to be taken lightly. And when she finally realized she'd lost everything, I hoped she'd understand just how badly she'd screwed up. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what was coming. I'd waited long enough. The moment was close. I could almost hear her panic setting in. The plan was simple, brutal in its clarity. Catch her red-handed, then make her regret it forever. And I just knew, that this was only the beginning of my revenge. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence of my apartment. I kept staring at my phone, watching the minutes crawl by, feeling the weight of anticipation crush my chest. Everything was set into motion. I had the photos, the evidence, the plan. Tonight was the night I'd finally confront her, and I was ready. Or so I told myself. I remember the way the room smelled that evening, something faintly floral, probably her perfume, mixed with the lingering scent of wine from earlier. My palms felt slick with sweat, and every nerve in my body was on edge. I kept thinking about how much I'd trusted her, how I'd believed in us, and how that trust was now shattered into 1,000 pieces. The doorbell rang, my stomach clenched. I wasn't sure if it was fear, anger, or a strange sense of relief, probably all three. I took a deep breath, wiped my palms on my jeans, and went to open the door. She stood there, hesitant, eyes flickering with uncertainty. Her face was streaked with tears, her makeup smudged, and her hands trembled. The sight of her like that made my stomach turn, but I pushed the feeling aside. Now wasn't the time for weakness. "Hey," she whispered, voice trembling. "Can we talk?" "Sure," I said coolly, stepping aside. "Come in." She hesitated, then stepped inside. The air between us was thick with unspoken words. I motioned for her to sit down on the couch and she did, nervously fidgeting with her hands. "I know about the texts," I said, voice steady but firm. "I saw everything. The meetings, the plans, what you and Mark have been doing. How long has this been going on?" She looked down, biting her lip hard enough to turn her face red. "A few months," she admitted softly. "I didn't mean for it to happen, it just did." "You're damn right it did," I snapped, voice rising slightly. "While I was planning our future, you were busy screwing around behind my back. Do you even realize how much you've destroyed, how much you've hurt me?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking." I felt my jaw tighten. Sorry wasn't going to cut it, I'd already seen enough. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the photos I'd collected from the private investigator, pictures of her and Mark sneaking into that cheap motel yesterday, faces pressed close, hands touching inappropriately. I laid them out on the table. Her eyes widened in horror. You had someone follow us." "Yeah," I said darkly. "Because I wanted to see what kind of person I was married to. Turns out not someone I ever knew, someone I barely recognize." She looked like she was about to say something, but I cut her off. "Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. You're done. I've made my decision. You cheated, lied, and betrayed everything we had." She looked utterly broken, trembling with guilt. "Please, can we talk, maybe work this out?" "No," I said bluntly. "There's nothing left to talk about. You've lost my trust and I don't see a way back from this. But I will give you one thing, you're about to learn what real revenge feels like." Her face crumpled. "What do you mean?" I pulled out a small envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside were the details of the plan I'd been working on all day, an email listing her and Mark's plans, the photos, and a little note telling her I knew everything. "You're going to get a taste of what it's like to be publicly humiliated," I said coldly. "Because I'm sending this to everyone, our friends, your family, even your boss." Her eyes widened with pure terror. "You wouldn't—" "Oh, I would," I interrupted. "And I will. If you think I'm done, think again. You're going to regret ever crossing me." She stared at me, speechless. Her face was a mix of shock and fury, but I knew I had her right where I wanted her. I handed her the envelope. "Take this, it's your wake-up call. And when everyone knows what kind of person you are, maybe then you'll understand what loyalty means." She clutched the envelope, trembling violently. "You're really doing this?" "Oh, I'm doing it," I said, voice flat. "Because I want you to see what betrayal gets you. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything because of your own choices." She looked at me with tears streaming down her face, then suddenly shot up and ran to the door. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're just as bad as I thought." I closed the door behind her, leaning against it, feeling a strange mixture of relief and rage. The plan was in motion. She'd be humiliated and I'd finally regain some sense of control. As I sat down in the quiet, I couldn't help but wonder, was this really the end? Or just the beginning of something much darker? Either way, I knew one thing for sure: she'd never forget this day. And I'd never let her forget who was in charge. The house was dead silent after she left, but my mind was anything but still. I could still feel her trembling hand clutching that envelope, her eyes wide with shock. That moment, that final confrontation, marked a turning point. I'd done what I set out to do: expose her, deliver the blow that would leave her reeling. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the start of what was coming next. I stayed up late that night, watching my phone, waiting for the inevitable fallout. I had sent the email with all the evidence, her and Mark's secret meetings, the photos, the details. Now it was just a matter of time before everything unraveled. I wasn't worried about her deleting the message or trying to spin her way out. This was out of her hands now. I managed to get a few hours of sleep, but my stomach stayed knotted. I kept replaying that moment when she ran out the door, her tears, her furious words. I felt a strange emptiness, like I'd just cut off a limb. The betrayal was one thing, but realizing the depth of her deception, that hit harder than I thought. I knew she'd try to spin it, to deny or justify, but I had done my homework. I knew her and Mark had been planning to run away together. I had proof of their secret meetings, their fake smiles, the way Mark had looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. I'd gathered enough to make sure the truth would come out, loud and clear. Around noon, my phone pinged. It was a flood of messages, friends asking if everything was okay, some even calling me directly. I kept my responses simple. Just some personal stuff, I wrote, knowing full well the truth was about to be exposed. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, exposed, just like I had been the night before. Then I made a call to my lawyer. I wanted to get everything in motion: divorce papers, the property division, the emotional damage control. I wasn't about to let her walk away without consequences. I wanted her to understand that loyalty wasn't something you tossed aside like a used tissue. That betrayal had a cost, and I was determined to make her pay. That afternoon, I decided to visit her at her office. She was still in shock, I could tell. She'd told her boss she was sick, but I knew she'd been called into HR. I wanted to be there when she received the news. I walked in, saw her face change as she spotted me, and I knew I'd made the right choice. "Can I speak to you for a minute?" I asked, voice calm but firm. She looked hesitant. "What do you want?" "I just came to say that everyone knows," I said evenly. "Your boss has the email, the whole office does. Your reputation about to take a pretty big hit." Her face turned pale, eyes filling. "Tears, please don't do this." "Oh, I already did," I said, "and I'll do more if I have to. You can try to spin your lies, but the truth's out, and trust me, you're not getting away with this." She broke down then, tears streaming, voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid. I was weak. Please, I'll do anything. Just don't ruin me." I looked at her, cold and unemotional. "It's too late for that. You made your choice, and now you're going to live with the consequences." I turned and left before I said something I'd regret, but part of me felt a strange relief. The house, the office, everything was starting to crumble around her, and I was the one holding the wrecking ball. That night I got a call from a close friend. She'd already heard from others, and the rumors were spreading fast. I could hear the shock in her voice. "Man, I didn't think she'd do something this low." "I knew," I said quietly. "But now everyone else does too. No more secrets." As I hung up, I looked out the window at the dark sky. The quiet hum of the city was deafening, but inside I felt a strange sense of victory. She had crossed every line I set, and now she was paying for it. I knew that this was only the beginning of my revenge. She'd see just how far I was willing to go. Because sometimes loyalty isn't just about sticking around. It's about knowing when to cut your losses and making damn sure she remembered what betrayal costs. The days that followed were like a slow, painful unraveling. I kept to myself, watching everything fall apart around her. Every time I saw her face, I remembered her tears, her begging, her desperation. It was humbling, yet strangely satisfying, to see her so exposed. I kept picturing how she'd react when she realized I'd turned her world upside down, how Mark's face would look when he learned I'd gone straight for the jugular. I'd already sent the emails, posted the truth on social media, and handed over the evidence to my lawyer. There was no turning back now. Each day, more people found out, more of her friends and family started to distance themselves. The whispers started, and her reputation was crumbling faster than I hoped. That evening, I decided to pay her a visit. I needed her to see that I wasn't done. Far from it. I parked outside her apartment and waited until she came home. When she finally pulled into the driveway, I got out of my car, my heart pounding with a strange mix of adrenaline and cold resolve. She saw me and froze for a second, like she'd seen a ghost. Her face twisted with panic, and she hurried to unlock the door. I blocked her path. "I just want a few minutes," I said calmly. "No games, just listen." She hesitated, then nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I followed her inside, feeling the weight of everything I'd set in motion. "You think you're done?" I asked, voice sharp. "This isn't over. You thought you could cheat and get away with it. No, I've got one last thing for you." She looked at me, eyes red-rimmed, trembling. "What do you mean?" I pulled out the envelope from my pocket, an envelope I had prepared earlier. Inside was a copy of the email I'd sent to everyone, the photos, and a detailed plan for what I was about to do. I laid it on the table between us. "I'm exposing you to everyone," I said. "Your boss, your friends, your family, every single person who thought you were better than this. You want to lie and pretend it's not true, fine, but the truth is already out there, and I'm making sure it sticks." Her eyes widened, her voice cracking. "You're really going to destroy me?" "Absolutely," I said, voice cold. "Because you made a choice. You chose Mark over me, over everything we built. And now I'm making sure you feel what it's like to be abandoned, humiliated, betrayed." She looked like she was about to break apart, tears streaming down her face again. Please, I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was stupid, I was weak, but I love you, I never wanted to hurt you. Love, I scoffed, eyes burning. Love doesn't cheat, doesn't lie, doesn't betray the person who's supposed to be your partner. Love doesn't destroy everything in a moment of weakness. She sank to her knees, clutching her head. I'll do anything, just don't do this, please. I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. It's already done, I said. You should have thought about that before you crossed the line. Now get yourself ready. I want you to feel what it's like to be left completely alone. I left her there, trembling and crying, clutching the evidence I'd handed her. She was broken, and I knew that this psychological blow was the final nail in the coffin. I'd won. Not with violence, but with precision, with the kind of revenge that leaves scars deeper than any physical wound. That night, I sat in my living room, feeling the emptiness settle in again. I knew she'd be in shock for days, maybe longer. But I also knew that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and making her see the real cost of betrayal. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. I had done everything I set out to do. All that was left was to see how she'd respond. But one thing was clear: she'd never look at me the same way again. And I'd never look at her with the same trust. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to rebuild. And honestly, I was just getting started. The house felt colder than usual that morning. Maybe it was the silence that had settled in after everything imploded. I woke up knowing I had already sealed my fate, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of relief. The chaos I'd orchestrated, the truths I'd forced out into the open, they had done their job. She was gone, or at least, she was about to be. I went through the motions, packing up her belongings, the few things she'd left behind. It was strange, sorting through memories I never thought would be tainted this way, but I kept telling myself it was necessary. It was the only way to reclaim some control over my life. I wanted to feel like I was taking back what was mine, my dignity, my peace. When she finally came to pick up her things, I was waiting at the door. She looked exhausted, defeated, like a ghost of the woman I once knew. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of shame and anger. She refused to meet my gaze, clutching a small bag, silent. "I'll give you your stuff," I said softly, stepping aside. "No more games, just take it and go." She hesitated, then slowly stepped inside. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." I looked at her, eyes cold but steady. "Sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't erase what you did or what I had to do to fix it." She looked down, tears brimming again. "You're better off without me." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I just realized I deserve better than someone who cheats, lies, and ruins everything we had. Don't come back. Don't try to fix this. Just go." She nodded, her shoulders slumping, turned, and left. Watching her walk away was almost surreal. A part of me felt victorious, but another part felt hollow, like I'd just watched my own destruction, piece by piece. As she disappeared down the street, I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. The silence was deafening. I looked around the apartment, now eerily empty, and thought about everything that had led up to this, every lie, every betrayal, every moment I'd trusted her blindly. I knew I'd have scars from this, emotional scars that would take years to fade. But I also knew I survived. I'd taken control back. The pain was real, but so was the clarity. Sometimes you need to burn everything down to rebuild stronger. I sat down on the couch, finally allowing myself to breathe. My heart was pounding, but it was a different kind of beat, one of relief, of liberation. I'd done what I needed to do. I'd shown her what happens when loyalty is broken, and I'd made sure she'd never forget it. Looking out the window, I saw the world outside moving on, indifferent to my pain. But inside, I felt a sense of finality. This chapter was over. I'd start over piece by piece with a hard-earned lesson sewn into every step. Trust was fragile, something I'd be more cautious with from now on. And as I finally stood up, I realized one thing for certain: I'd be okay. Better, even. Because sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to tear everything down first. And I'd proven I was strong enough to do just that.